everyone, my name is Catherine.
And I'm Karanjit. We are from How and Hospera.
So today we'll be talking about retrenchment and layoff.
Hi everyone, so today we'll be discussing about retrenchment and layoff. We'll first look at the definition. So for retrenchment, it means termination of employment. This could be due to surplus or incapacity of employees to match the performance standard of a company. To put it simply, it means that the number of employees in the company is in excess of what the company actually requires. This could be due to economic turmoil, whereby companies are forced to downsize or restructure its business. We'll then move on to layoff. Layoff means temporary suspension or permanent termination of employment. This could be due to reasons other than an employee's actual performance. For example, fire or flood.
Retrenchment basically is a process whereby the employer reviews its business needs in order to increase profit or to limit losses, which leads to reducing its employees. So generally, employer have right to basically retrench his employees, but the employer must make sure that he meets certain requirement or condition in order to retrench his employees. This is to ensure that there's a fair procedural. Okay, the first is that it must be a genuine financial impact. So for retrenchment to work, there must be some sort of external factor that leads to retrenchment. So this could be to basically to increase the profit, or to reduce operating costs, or to cope with economic downturn or even natural disaster. So as long as there's a genuine reason, then the employer can choose to retrench his employee. Okay, but if an employee chooses to retrench his employee for, let's say, bad behavior, or there's some issue in terms of discipline, then retrenchment will not work, because retrenchment will only work as long as it does not involve the fault of an employee. Okay, second is that employer must look into other alternatives. So other alternatives can be limiting overtime, reducing workforces, limiting workers from working on weekends or public holidays, or perform a temporary layoff or reduce workers' salary. So these are the other options that the employer can consider before even going into retrenchment. Okay, if let's say if these other options does not work, then employer can still terminate contract of employment, but provided that when it involves a local staff or Malaysian workers, then what the employer needs to do is that he must prioritize local workers over foreign workers. Okay, but when it involves with local staff, okay, then what the employer need to do is that he need to adhere to the principle of last in first out. So basically this principle has been adopted by many companies, many business organizations, and this is also accepted in many leading cases. So basically salary reduction can be another option beside retrenchment. Okay, the general rule is that under section 24 of Employment Act, basically it says that salary deduction cannot be allowed at any circumstances unless otherwise as stated in the Employment Act itself. So which means deduction will only be allowed if it is stated in the Employment Act itself. But in certain circumstances, let's say economic turmoil, or in our situation it will be COVID-19, then it is a circumstances where salary reduction could be an option. So what the employee need to do is that he first must sit and negotiate with his employee and make sure that he has obtained the consent of the employee to make sure that could be salary deduction. Okay, in event if the employer fails to do so, then it will result in unfair dismissal claim, because it will amount to breach of contract of employment. Okay, so basically for the first thing that I wish to highlight is basically to notify the employee on notice of termination. So notice of termination, the length to serve the notice could actually be referred in the contract of service itself. It will be usually stated in the terms, but if it is not stated in the contract of service or contract of employment, then you can always refer to terms of employment, which is stated clearly in section 12 of Employment Act. Okay, So moving on to the next one is basically whatever I have highlighted before, and these are the do's and don'ts for layoff. So layoff is a bit different compared to retrenchment. Layoff basically works for a very temporary basis. Okay, so basically it refers to a temporary suspension of employment by the employer. Company layoff usually would actually put an end or basically temporary hold on the wages itself. So temporary layoff or layoff itself could happen, for example, if there's a flood, or there's the business is closed for renovation, or there's fire, or there's breakdown of machine, or whatever reason it is. It's very temporary basis. It's not like retrenchment. So for layoff period, usually the employee remains as employee of the business organization. It's just that because they do not perform their whatever they are employed for, so because of that they do not get the wages. So this thing is very temporary. So for, let's say, after a month, okay, after let's say the renovation is over, after a month then they get to work. So these are things that's very basic and temporary, and the employee would be restored back to the original position. So here it's temporary basis. Okay, you must specify the period for layoff. So this is the employer's duty, and also to notify the employees. It's a must, same as retrenchment, and also to have regular contacts and communication. This is also important, and basically these are the don'ts, which are the same as retrenchment.
So we'll now move on to the last part of the slide, which is the benefits for retrenchment and layoff. So should an employee be terminated by a company on grounds of redundancy, he or she will be paid a lump sum, which is also sometimes known as the retrenchment benefit, and this is governed under the Employment Act 1955. So as you can see in this table, the benefits are actually dependent on the term of employment. It should be noted that such benefits will not be applicable in cases where the employee resigned, retired, or is dismissed for disciplinary reasons. A prior written notice, however, shall be given to the aggrieved employee, and period of such notice is actually dependent on the contract of employment.
So that's all for today. We hope you enjoyed the slide. Thank you for your time.
If you have further inquiries, please leave a comment on the comment section below.